Good morning, video diary. So today I want to talk about the effects of slipping away. It was one experience when Forrest had only died a few days or weeks. Now it's been over 6 months. I'll have moments of normal and even flashes of desire for a future, for a meaningful future for myself. I'm reading a book right now about how we repeat the same patterns and thoughts. And when you do that, you you create a continuation. And when I was reading that, I know that the author was framing that in if you have negative thoughts or negative habits, that your negative thoughts will cause you to feel a certain way, which makes you physically reinforce that behavior. And the whole thing becomes a kind of bad cycle where your physical body and your mind are both heavily compelling you to behaviors that might be bad for you. Like if you think, screw it. That's what these guys that I knew who were big pot smokers who were trying to quit. And whenever they said, screw it, like, oh, I don't care, or, they said as soon as they had that thought that he would go buy a bag. And some people don't think that marijuana has that potential for control in a person's life, but it does. And I was there because I was annoyed and also had to admit that marijuana had become too central, and I couldn't not smoke, or shall I say, it just created a tension between doing it and not doing it that was constant. And I finally, I guess, white knuckled myself out of it, where I said, I don't want to be like these people. I don't want to have a cause like this that is so big in my life that I can't get to other things. So that thought helped me kick it, and I didn't smoke pot for 7 years. And then one day I found some pot from Forrest, found a bud underneath the couch, and he was probably like 15, and and no one was home, and I hadn't smoked in like, those 7 years, and I smoked that bud a little bit at a time, and it was great. I was up all night writing music that night, going like, wow, yeah, this was the feeling I remember. This was the experience I liked. And I think more or less since then I have been using again. So that's been over 10 years. Um, and over time got away from smoking to this sort of melting thing, which is, I think, a little less harmful. It's a lot less harmful because there's nothing burning. Uh, it doesn't waste my mind or my body. Uh, a lot of people who wish to extol the virtues of cannabis are telling me how good it is for me. You know, is it? I don't know. Feels good. Um, how well do I know myself? How well do I really know myself? I've created a series of habits that were a lot more positive um, than negative. For example, I started exercising. I read these books. Books have helped me a lot, but these books were written by prisoners in long-term isolation situations, and they came out of these situations in phenomenal shape. Um, and so we asked how, and a few guys wrote books about this. Uh, and so I started doing a kind of no excuses physical transformation because according to these ideas, you don't need a gym, you don't need the time you think you don't need equipment, you don't need you don't need anything. You just need the will, the vision, the will, and the understanding that says, I'm going to do this every day. It's kind of an everyday thing because it's true. Because if you're in better physical condition, you live longer, your clothes fits better, you feel better about yourself. Even if you're not at some place or goal, it's more like the path is the goal. But you feel better. And those feeling betters start to stack up and become who you are. And you start to also become less tolerant of other people who have tons of excuses as to why they can't do the exact same thing. And when I mean intolerant, I only mean that I would kindly disagree, or at least say you don't need those things. If you want to get in great shape, you need this thing. You need your brain set in the right with the right group of thoughts. And so I didn't want to like, you don't want to put people down, but at the same time, you don't want to listen to their bullshit. You want to be able to say, that's an excuse, and shed it. And again, like I said, I don't care if you shed it or not. It's like the world is going to be full of people that are going to die kicking and screaming, angry, blaming other people, making excuses for why they didn't get enough or do enough or have enough. It's it's true that people can be held back, but mostly we are held back by ourselves. But it's realizing that that's happening that makes you change your strategy. So a person needs to wake up a little, maybe a lot, but you can possess things that only you can give yourself. I used to listen to just the most amazing guitarists who were young. You know, you hear people who are in their 20s and they're just ripping it up. And I always felt in the dark, like musically, like how is that happening? How are they hearing all of that? How are they doing that? Why did that lick or that phrase sound so good? And how come I can't do it? And those are good questions. And they led me to answers. And sometimes it's just years of, I want to say it's years of trial and error, but in that time, I tried to find as many, uh, true paths to something. And sometimes the only true path to something is to just do the difficult work, like one little step at a time, every day for months or years. And then all of a sudden you've got a wow. Like, whoa, how did you do that? How is it that you do that? Um, and that's what I did. I took the tools and I did the work. And now I'm able to digest chord changes and understand how they relate and make things out of them that I feel like making out of them. But man, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that a couple years ago. And 1 year ago it was truly beginning, but I was like, I'm gonna get this to flow. That gig that I had right before Forrest died, I mean, I have many gigs, but this was like the one that I was, you know, putting my work into. Um, I I had through the pressure of those of working those songs, I came to a shorthand that allowed me to navigate. I wouldn't have done that had I not had the pressure to do it. And my son understood things like this because he had a few gigs himself. I helped him frame his head, about like, well, you have to play those tunes like the way you train. Let's say you had a few fights. You start from the date and you work back, and then you're going to be so happy that you're like, man, I'm glad I worked on that stuff for for 2 months. I said, if you've got a gig and you're getting up and you're doing 3 tunes, you need to work for about 2 months so that you kill those tunes, so that the people in the audience are like, he is those songs. Because the time is brief and you already have to have that zone. Anyway, this is the coolest thing that humans can do in some way. This process of creating some beautiful moment and the human doing it. You know, I don't think if a machine played these tunes or learned to improvise that it would be the same, only because the way that we pass all this information through our entire life history. For any of you improvisers, you understand that idea probably because when we're playing, you know, all kinds of thoughts or things can kind of come in all of a sudden, and we can grab that and follow it down and create an idea and impose that idea, you know, allow it to weave, abandon it, come back to it, requote a melody, remind ourselves what world we're in, depart again. I mean, I don't know of anything else that's quite like this. Maybe sparring, or even like MMA or whatever fighting might have that, but again, you're there's such a finite place where you're ending up. The goal is to knock one guy down, and you know, in music we ostensibly don't do that. You know, we elevate and maintain that energy for longer, although it is the same kind of feeling of micro adjusting to the realities that are presenting themselves and learning as you do it, and feeling that, contrasting that, or that having that be happening inside other information. So it's not just what I want to say, it's how what I'm saying is being affected by what somebody else might be doing too. Man, so now, 6 months later, who do I tell this stuff to? And as time slips further back, my son is further away from me in a flesh and blood sense. And now he's like just up here. And when I'm having a difficult moment, I'll say, "Come on," and I'll see him, or some shit like that. He was one of the few people that got me. I thought I got him. But he loved heroin more than life itself. He was willing to risk life and death for whatever that is. For whatever that is.